Hi, everyone. I'm Will from Signal Rock Capital. Signal Rock Capital is a fund administration and consulting firm that specializes in helping first-time or newer investors raise funds and deploy capital in new and innovative ways. So I really believe in trying to democratize the deployment of capital across the US because I think there are, and I've seen that there are a lot of investors who have money to invest, but aren't professional investors. So what we do at Signal Capital is try to work with people like the folks over at Capital Gravity Arizona to develop ways in which we can educate and deploy capital in ways that make sense for first-time investors or people who are doing it as a hobby. And so what that means is we look at innovative approaches to doing that, and we try to come up with fee structures that make sense to lower the barrier of entry for raising small funds or even single purpose kind of one-time investment funds, and therefore allow people to put in $5,000 instead of $25,000 or $50,000 into a fund, where it maybe makes more sense, especially if you're learning for the first time. So that's what Signal Rock Capital is. That's what we believe in. That's what we do. And let me tell you a little bit about what the fund administration piece looks like for an angel conference or the kind of event that Capital Gravity is putting together. So normally I spend quite a bit of time, and I have with this team too, quite a bit of time kind of talking about the process, designing the fund up front. I provide templated legal documents that are reviewed by attorneys in whatever state we're working in. We kind of have a basis to start from, and then we start talking about how the variables in those documents and how we want investors to be able to do certain things or not do certain things. Sometimes the ability to not do something is really important, and how it's going to work best for that community. So I spend time up front consulting with the teams to get this process in place. And then when we start working together, I do a lot of the back end work that nobody else really likes to do. So the filings of the entity, the open a bank account, the document processing. So making sure everybody has the documents in a way that makes sense to them, making sure it's all signed, making sure we do the accredited investor checks for everybody, collecting the capital, making sure that the cap table is right, so everyone has the right percentage of ownership that they should have, closing the investment with the company or companies that the fund invests in, and then maintaining that entity and fund over time. Typically, I put together kind of a 10-year time frame. Most funds end before 10 years, but some go longer depending on economic factors. So then I kind of maintain everything on the administration side, which includes annual filings. It includes ongoing bookkeeping. It includes tax filings, working with CPAs to make sure that we file things on time and distribute K1s to investors if we need to do that. And so that's the work that I do. The fee structure for Signal Rock Capital is designed to, again, try to lower the barrier for entry for funds. So there is a fixed amount of work and usually a fixed amount of cost associated with a fund, no matter how much capital you raise. So raising a small fund can be really expensive in terms of percentage of fees versus raising a larger fund. Well, what we do is we try to get the cash outlay really low up front, and then have a little bit of share in the profits on the back end. And that way we can get that fund up and running without it costing too much, still do all the work over time, and have, should there be a profitable return to investors, we're incentivized on the back end there as well. So that's how we put these fee structures together to try to align our interests and our work with the fund's interests, and especially with these earlier stage funds that are smaller, try to make it so they can get up and off the ground without costing so much money. So now that you know a little bit about the fees that we charge, let me walk you through what we think will be the expected costs for this particular fund in Arizona. So the nice thing about Arizona is that it's a pretty business-friendly state in that it doesn't cost a lot of money to have an LLC and to maintain an LLC. So that's really good. It means that we can keep some of those administrative filing costs low over time. So what we're looking at is a $5,000 fund administrator fee. That's my fee that's paid to Signal Rock Capital. That's for the work that we do that I just talked about. And then $100 to $200 in initial filing fees. Arizona is really low. I think it's only about $50 to file an LLC in Arizona. And I don't believe that there are any ongoing filing requirements or fees, but sometimes things change. Sometimes states change their requirements. And sometimes there are things that we didn't know about when we first filed that we find out later. So we bake in a little bit of extra money there just as a cushion. Then should we need to file K-1s and tax returns? I work with a CPA in Idaho, where I'm based, that charges $400 a year. So I get kind of a volume discount with this CPA. And so I put that in the budget. It's $400 per year to do a tax filing and distribute the K-1s to the investors. So over 10 years, that's about $4,000. Now, in Arizona, I'm not convinced that we have to do a K-1 filing every year. So I'm still investigating that, which is why I have kind of a range on our total budget that I'll show you in just a second. But hopefully we can design a process that is low on the administrative front and prevents us from needing to send out K-1s every year. So if the fund has no financial transaction, then what we're looking into is, do we have to file a tax return, or can we just file a statement that says there was no financial activity and therefore no change in financials and therefore no need to distribute K-1s and file a tax return? So that's what we're looking into. But if we need to file a K-1 and tax returns every year, we will do that. And it's a $400 fee for that per year. And then lastly, I bake in just $1,000 of miscellaneous things that may or may not happen. It's nice just to have a little bit of cushion in the budget if something comes up. Again, in a state like Arizona that's business friendly, I think those things that come up won't be very expensive from the research I've done so far. In other states like California, we put a lot more aside in miscellaneous, because if something should happen in California, it just costs more. Everything just costs more in California. So that's a kind of an example of how this budget is different than other funds, because I don't think we need to put quite so much away. And so the total budget, administrative budget for this fund, is going to be somewhere between $6,000 and $9,000. That's my range. And so we don't need to put away any more administrative funds than that. So we want to have a budget that allows us to have some wiggle room. We could increase that a little bit if the fund management decides, you know what, let's just have a little bit more. We can increase that. In some funds, we have as much as $25,000 that we put away, depending on what the fund managers want to do. But it's my job to work with them and to inform all of you on what that budget looks like and what's reasonable, and then try to carve out enough that we can maintain the fund over time, but give your investment dollars the biggest impact possible. So we want to keep the administrative fees as low as possible, so your dollars are going into your investment and not just the maintenance of an LLC. So that's a little bit about me, about Signal Rock Capital. That's a bit about what we do as a fund administration firm in relation to an event like the one that Capital Gravity is putting on, and just a little bit about the budget that we're putting together for this fund. So I really encourage any of you to reach out to me anytime. My email address, I'll put it on the screen here, but it's will@signalrockcapital.com. Reach out with any questions about this or anything else. I'm happy to make contact with you and have a conversation about fund administration, about Arizona, about whatever you want. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.